It's really kind of funny how hard certain liberal intellectuals are trying to equate trolling on the internet to actual mass killings and violence. It's hilarious, but it's also kind of sad. Hello and welcome to the Sharma Show Global. This is the Sharma Show, but in English. Thank you very much for watching. So Emmanuel Macron has given a lot of people some very strong headaches in the past few days. See, this is a leader that a lot of liberal intellectuals support and admire because of his constant stand on fighting for liberal values, and also mainly because he is not shy of taking on Donald Trump as well. But what he has said in the aftermath of the brutal Paris terrorist attack has made a lot of left liberals extremely uncomfortable. So as you may be aware, last week, a school teacher was brutally murdered by a terrorist after he showed the Charlie Hebdo caricatures of Prophet Muhammad as part of a discussion on free speech in his class. So unless you're like that character from Ghajini, this really shouldn't surprise you. These kinds of attacks and this kind of intimidation has a very, very long history. You might remember how the Ayatollah Khomeini passed a fatwa for the murder of Salman Rushdie simply for the crime of writing a book. You might remember the mass murder of the employees of Charlie Hebdo simply for the crime of drawing cartoons. You might remember the murder of a Hindu publisher simply for the crime of publishing a book called Rangila Rasool, which was published in response to extremely abusive comments made against Sri Krishna by the Muslim community. And more recently, you might also remember the brutal murder of Kamlesh Tiwari for the simple crime of blasphemy. Macron came out and gave some strong statements. He said, "We respect all differences in a spirit of peace. We do not accept hate speech and defend reasonable debate. We will always be on the side of human dignity and universal values." He said that France will not give up the cartoons depicting the Prophet Muhammad, and Islamists will never have France's future. In fact, France took the bold decision of displaying the Charlie Hebdo cartoons on various government buildings around France as well. Macron also described the problem of Islamic separatism within France's Islamic community, and he also said that the 6 million strong Islamic community in France was developing a counterculture which is separate from the French values of liberty, equality, and fraternity. See, these are things that are very, very difficult for the enlightened liberals in India and the West to hear. Simply because these are things that the enlightened liberals in India in the West will never ever dare say themselves. The old established belief is that Western culture must be reformed and must be brought up with modern values. Hindu culture must be reformed and must be brought in line with modern values. But Islamic culture doesn't need that scrutiny. This practice of soft bigotry of low expectations, this stupidity on the part of Western and Indian liberals, it emboldens and it encourages the intolerant religious fanatics within the Islamic community to thoroughly dominate the moderate and reformist voices within Islamic communities. And this leads to the creation of what Timothy Garton Ash calls the assassin's veto, where in a society, the intolerant part of the society, instead of the liberal part of the society, gets to decide what is allowed and what isn't allowed. This has created a situation where some cultures can be freely criticized, can be freely exposed, can be freely ridiculed, but other cultures should not be criticized and ridiculed and made fun of. As you can understand, this hypocrisy will obviously create hostility and resentment among the cultures that are being ridiculed and criticized towards the culture which is free from all this criticism. This is like if you were allowed to crap on Salman Khan's movies, if you're allowed to crap on Amir Khan's movies, but you were not allowed to crap on Shah Rukh Khan's movies. Why? He has made plenty of terrible movies as well. We should have the right to crap on Shah Rukh Khan's movies as well. And the funny thing is that many liberals know and realize this hypocrisy deep down. That is why they are so desperate to create these false comparisons. They're desperate to prove that all cultures, all religions, and all cultural ideologies are exactly the same. They're desperate to prove that all the actions of one community are exactly the same as the actions of other communities. There's absolutely no difference. And you can see this in political leaders and eminent intellectuals as well. So the first point of contact in understanding India for many foreign news organizations is Mr. Sadanand Dhume. He says if you vociferously support the right to draw Muhammad cartoons in France, but go nuts if someone draws a disrespectful cartoon of the goddess Kali, then you aren't a warrior for free speech. You're merely a Muslim-bashing Hindu supremacist. So listen here, Dhume. Just like there's a difference between an ankle sprain and full-blown brain cancer, similarly, there's a difference between outraging on Twitter, being abusive on Twitter, and actual beheadings and mass killings. There's a difference between checking out top to bottom a woman that is not your wife and straight up cheating on your wife. They're both not good, but one is certainly worse than the other. Similarly, a leader of the Congress party, Salman Nizami, says, Prophet Muhammad is the most sacred in Islam and whoever attacks his honor attacks the entire ummah. Sad that Macron is encouraging the display of blasphemous cartoons rather than bring different groups together and mediate for harmony. This is not how an inclusive president should act. And this is truly beautiful because rather than condemning the actual terrorist act, rather than condemning the act that has actually took away an innocent life, you're actually condemning the bloody cartoons and you're condemning the president that is condemning the terror attack. What do you even say to that?
Why are you the way that you are? I hate so much about the things that you choose to be.
Then of course comes the leader of the greatest meme nation on the planet, Pakistan. Imran Khan Niazi wants to be the white knight for the entire Islamic world. Imran Khan Niazi is desperate to defend the honor of his nation's great Turkish Arabic heritage. He says, this is a time when President Macron should have put a healing touch and denied space to extremists rather than creating further polarization and marginalization that inevitably leads to radicalization. Thing is, Niazi, the radicalization has already happened. Because if the radicalization had not happened, the teacher would not have lost his head. It's like complaining after 9/11 that you should not go and kill Osama bin Laden because it'll lead to radicalization. Bro, if radicalization hadn't already happened, 9/11 wouldn't happen. Niazi is talking about inclusivity and says that the last thing that the world wants or needs is further polarization. Such a beautiful message. Except for the fact that in his country, at the same time, Hindus and Sikhs are being systematically targeted and exterminated. Hindu and Sikh women and young girls are being systematically kidnapped, sexually assaulted, and forcibly converted to Islam. Things are so bad in Pakistan that India had to create a specific law, the Citizenship Amendment Act, to save the Hindus and Sikhs of Pakistan from extinction. Well, forget Hindus and Sikhs because they're kuffars, but even people of the book like Ahmadiyas and Shias are considered kuffars in Pakistan, and they're openly denied basic rights. In fact, to even join a government office, you have to legally declare that you believe that Muhammad is the last prophet of Islam. A non-Muslim cannot run for the office of president in Pakistan. Inclusive Pakistan's government has excluded the long persecuted Ahmadiyya community from a government commission that is aimed at safeguarding the rights of the country's minorities. And this tin pot country's leader has the bloody gall to go up to a country like France and lecture them about inclusivity and liberal values. I mean, I used to think Don Quixote was delusional, but holy crap, this is another level. But I also want to support Pakistan since they are my neighbors. So look, Pakistan, many Middle Eastern countries have decided to boycott French products. I think you should do that as well. Since you're so against France and since you're so angry at what the French president has said and done, you should also boycott all French products, starting with the $500 million that the French government has given to you as assistance in 2019. You should return that money, and you should also return all of the French assistance that you've gotten over the past years as well. You don't need that money, Pakistan. Give it back. You should also make a promise to the Islamic world that you will take no more money and assistance from any of these godless, blasphemous Western nations. That is the best way to teach these Western nations a lesson. Please comment below if you'd like to support Pakistan in this endeavor. And meme nations aside, the kind of intolerance that we're seeing among this one particular community is exactly why this community needs to have free and proper criticism. I drew a lot of criticism and I drew a lot of abuse when I said that people should have the right to question, criticize, parody, and draw Hindu gods and goddesses any way they want. I might like it, I might hate it, but they should have the freedom to do it. And yeah, Hindus will huff and puff, and Hindus will abuse you on Twitter, and maybe they'll say horrible things about your mother on Twitter, but that is the extent of it. The difference between Hindu culture, Western culture, and Islamic culture at the moment is that with Islamic culture, you have the religious fanatics who are ready to use violence as a tool of suppression of free speech. B, you have the moderate Muslims who have been conditioned into thinking that criticizing their religion and leaving their religion should be considered a crime. And C, you have the liberal intellectuals and elites who have decided that any criticism against Islam and Islamic culture and the Muslim people is equivalent to Islamophobia. It's equivalent to bigotry, and thus we should not say anything. And so now, like some kind of bloody laundry detergent, Islamic society has this triple layer of protection against any kind of free speech. So when it comes to this one particular community, the liberals have well and truly turned their back on liberal values and free speech. They need to understand that the defense of the universal human right of free speech is not a provocation. It is not some kind of phobia. It is rather a moral obligation in a free society.